Who is the best lightweight in boxing? So in my last video, I started a damn forest fire when I said Gervonta Davis was levels above Ryan Garcia, and I said that a fight between the two would not be close. And as that video grew and I started to see more and more comments, I started to wonder, who is the best lightweight in boxing? So it should be no surprise that the lightweight division is by far the most stacked division in boxing. I mean, one of the most anticipated super fights in this division is between two guys that are in the middle of the pack, and many fans wouldn't consider the best lightweights. But before we get into who the best lightweight in the world is, let's take a look at the current lightweight rankings based on who has had and has the belts. This is the current lightweight rankings according to Ring Magazine, and it's pretty accurate. And again, this is solely based on who has had and has the belts. Currently, Devin Haney has all the belts, and Devin Haney beat George Kambosos. George Kambosos beat Teofimo Lopez, and Teofimo Lopez beat Lomachenko. Now, as for the other four guys, the order in which they should be ranked can be disputed, but I think everybody will agree that these last four guys round out the top 8 in the lightweight division. So you're probably thinking, this is the end of the video. This is the lightweight ranking, and this shows who is the best. The person with all the belts is the best. The person who had the belts but got beat by the best is worse than the best, and the person that they beat is worse than them and worse than the guy with all the belts. But if you've been a fan of boxing and fighting in general, you know that's not the case. So in MMA, there is an idea called MMA math, which can be applied here and all combat sports. So I think this Reddit user defines MMA math the best, but it's basically this idea that if fighter A beats fighter B and fighter B beat fighter C, then fighter A is also better than fighter C, even if fighter A never fought fighter C. So is George Kambosos better than Lomachenko because he beat Teofimo Lopez and Teofimo Lopez beat Lomachenko? Is Devin Haney better than Teofimo Lopez because Devin Haney beat George Kambosos and George Kambosos beat Teofimo Lopez? I think it's really hard to say if those fighters are truly better than the former opponents of the guys they beat. So in today's video, I'm going to try to rank the best lightweights, not based on MMA math, but rather their resume, their style, and who I think would beat most other lightweights in the division. So I'm going to take these top 8 lightweights, split them into 3 categories, justify why they should be in each category, and go over their complete resume. And at the very end, I'm going to rank these lightweights and see which one comes out on top. So starting at the top, we have the first category, which is potential champs. I considered fighters in this category to not only attain all the belts, but be able to defend all the belts against the other guys in this category. I think everybody at this level has a strong argument for why they're the best lightweight in the division. Starting with the current unified champion, Devin Haney. So as you may know, Devin Haney has all the belts right now. He has the WBC, WBO, WBA Super, IBF, and Ring Magazine lightweight titles. He's a very slick and defensive fighter with very sharp and precise counterpunching and a very, very good jab. He is also a solid ring general and has a very deep skill set to outclass most opponents in this division. He has a very solid resume, with his most notable wins being George Kambosos, Jojo Diaz, Jorge Linares, and Gamboa. I think the strongest argument for Devin Haney to be the best lightweight in the world is that he has all the belts. And even though I did say belt rankings do not equal like the actual rankings of the best fighters, but him being so skilled and so polished definitely backs this up. He completely outclassed and dominated George Kambosos, Jojo Diaz, and yes, he did get rocked in the Jorge Linares fight, but a majority of that fight he completely dominated. He also outclassed Gamboa, albeit an aging Gamboa, but still, he has outclassed and outskilled many of the top contenders or former champions within the lightweight division. But there are valid arguments against calling Devin Haney the best lightweight. For starters, he hasn't fought Lomachenko or Lopez. We really can't gauge how good Devin Haney is in comparison with Lomachenko and Lopez just because he beat George Kambosos. Again, we can't use MMA math. So until Devin Haney does fight one of those two, it's very hard to call Devin Haney the undisputed best lightweight because he hasn't fought those two top lightweights. And speaking of one of the two top lightweights, Lomachenko probably has the best, most well-rounded resume out of all of the other lightweights. He's the former WBC, WBO, WBA, Super, and Ring Magazine lightweight champion. He has a deep resume of former opponents and notable wins, including Luke Campbell, Pedraza, Jorge Linares, Rigondeaux, Anthony Crolla, Nakatani, and Comey. His Matrix style is probably the most iconic style in the lightweight division and boxing period. He's able to stay within the pocket and hit without getting hit. He utilizes really advanced footwork and angles and has extremely high fight IQ. I think out of all of the other lightweights, Lomachenko has been exposed to the most styles, and he's able to bend his style to fight other styles. Obviously, Lomachenko has a very strong argument as to why he should be named the best lightweight. He obtained most of the belts that are now unified. He dominated the division when he was the champ for 2 to 3 years and defended those belts against top opponents. He was arguably the pound for pound best boxer and is still a top 10 pound for pound boxer. He has one of the strongest resumes in the division, and he has a style that's very hard to break. But there are arguments against Lomachenko being the best lightweight. For starters, he doesn't have any of the belts anymore. He did lose to Teofimo Lopez, albeit a very close fight. He did lose. And it's hard to call somebody the best if they did lose to a top guy. And speaking of Teofimo Lopez, to round out the potential champs, Lopez is the last fighter in this category. He is one of the strongest lightweights in the division. He has very good power and very good pressure. He unified the lightweight division back in 2020 when he beat Lomachenko by adding the IBF belt to the belts Lomachenko already had. In terms of notable wins, obviously he beat the guy at the time, Lomachenko, but he's also beat Richard Comey and Nakatani, two guys that are routinely in the top 10 or around top 15 lightweights in the world. Teofimo's argument for being the best lightweight is that he did beat Lomachenko, who was the guy at the time, and this performance against a fighter we thought was unstoppable really helps his argument. And up to and including the Lomachenko fight, Teofimo Lopez was absolutely starching his opponents. Not only is he a very strong and powerful puncher, but he has very underrated boxing skill, which he showed against Lomachenko. But obviously, the big elephant in the room and why he, to many people, isn't considered the best lightweight is that he lost to Kambosos. He lost to a guy he should have not even been in a competitive fight with, and that definitely taints his argument for being the best. Alright, moving on to the next category, it's top contenders. These are the guys that will give the toughest test to anybody being the potential champ, and maybe on a really good night, these top contenders can be the champ, but I don't see them being champs for that long. Starting off with Gervonta Davis, like I said in my previous video, he's extremely powerful and explosive, but has very underrated ring IQ, and he definitely has more than just power to end a fight. Currently, he has the WBA regular title, which isn't as legitimate as the other titles held by Devin Haney, but he does have that title nonetheless. Notable opponents include Leo Santa Cruz, Pedraza, Gamboa, and Mario Barrios. Obviously, Gervonta Davis's argument for why he should be a top contender and maybe a top lightweight period is that he has insane power, and in my opinion is the most powerful lightweight in the division. And I think his power gives any lightweight a really hard challenge to deal with. But the reason why I can't put Tank in that potential champ category is because he does not have a resume even close to Devin Haney, Lomachenko, or Teofimo Lopez. He hasn't fought any of the top lightweights besides maybe Isaac Cruz. So until he fights another one or two top lightweight, it's hard for me to see him being the champ and staying the champ. Again, given his insane power, I can see him maybe somehow knocking out one of the top guys in the potential champ category, but it's hard for me to see him stay with such a limited resume. Moving on to George Kambosos, he's probably most famously known for beating and upsetting Teofimo Lopez. He was obviously the former unified champion, having held the WBC, WBO, WBA Super, IBF, and Ring Magazine lightweight title. He has very great cardio. He is also an extremely tough fighter, and he can definitely stand with the best. He withstood one of the toughest and strongest fighters in Teofimo Lopez and was able to outlast him through those 12 rounds. But as you saw from the Devin Haney fight, he can definitely get outclassed by some of the potential champs and maybe another top contender. He has a very limited skill set in my opinion, and I don't think he is skilled enough to be a champion and stay a champion. But again, because he beat Teofimo Lopez and showed that type of heart and toughness, he gives any lightweight a really tough challenge. Moving on to the dark horses of the division, these are the guys I see maybe beating the top contenders and maybe with a very slim chance beating some of the potential champions. but I just can't see them realistically becoming champions, let alone staying champions. Starting off the dark horse category is Ryan Garcia. He obviously is known for being extremely fast, and in my opinion is probably the quickest lightweight with a very deadly left hook. He was the former WBC interim champion, if that means anything, and he has fought and defeated Luke Campbell. I think his lightning quick speed poses a new challenge to any of the lightweights in the division, but because of his very limited skill set, I just can't see him beating a Lomachenko, a Devin Haney, and in my last video, like I said, a Gervonta Davis, let alone like Teofimo Lopez. But again, because of his lightning quick speed and his deadly left hook, I think his style would make really fun matchups against the top guys in the division. But again, I just can't see him winning against those guys. Isaac Cruz is another dark horse within the division, and he showed against Gervonta Davis that he can handle his own, and he's a very tough opponent to put away. He is a very hard hitter and again a tough pressure fighter, but because of his simple and straightforward style, I just see a majority of the potential champs and probably top contenders outclassing and beating him easily. But I still do think that it's going to be really hard to knock him out. And finally, the last of the top 8 lightweights is Jojo Diaz. He has a very traditional Mexican style of boxing. He moves forward, he delivers really punishing body shots, and he's just a tough fighter all around. He was the former IBF super featherweight champion when he beat Tevin Farmer, and similar to Isaac Cruz, he gives any top lightweight a very tough and rough fight. But I do think because of his limited skill set, he gets outclassed by most fighters in the division. So as I was going through each category and each fighter's resume, I didn't really go into a specific order. So this is my order in which I would rank the lightweights. So as you can see, Lomachenko is on top. I do think that he beats most of the other lightweights like 9 times out of 10. Even though he lost against Teofimo Lopez, towards the end of the fight, we could clearly see Lomachenko landing more, and if he had turned up his output and was more active earlier in the fight, I think that Lomachenko would have won that fight and will win the rematch. I just see Lomachenko's style and high fight IQ being able to deal with all the other top lightweights in the division. Devin Haney at number 2 should also be no surprise. I still think Lomachenko is better than Devin Haney right now, and if they were to fight right now, I do see Lomachenko winning that fight. But Devin Haney again has a very deep skill set and is super young. I wouldn't be surprised if later down the line, like in the next 1 or 2 years, Devin Haney overtakes Lomachenko, because Lomachenko is 34 and Devin Haney is only 23. Up next we have Teofimo Lopez, and one of the reasons why I have him under Devin Haney is that, one, Devin Haney arguably has a better resume than Teofimo Lopez. He's defeated more top 10 lightweights such as Jorge Linares, who was top 10 at the time, Jojo Diaz, and George Kambosos. And I feel like I'm reiterating myself here, but I think Devin Haney has so many tools in his arsenal. I think his precision punching, his really well-timed jab, his really high IQ and defensive skill is enough to take a guy like Teofimo Lopez and most other lightweights besides Lomachenko. But even in the case of Lomachenko, even though I did say I would have Loma in that fight, I think Devin Haney would bring a really tough fight to Loma, and I wouldn't even be surprised if Devin were to beat Loma in the near future. At number 4, I have Gervonta Davis. I think he has so much potential and he has so much raw power and explosiveness that he could deal with any of the lightweights at any category that I've made. But he's been relatively unproven thus far, and it's hard for me to put him in the top 3 if he hasn't fought nearly at the level of a top 3 lightweight. Now this is where the lightweight rankings get really interesting. I think the last 4 guys are really hard to rank. At number 5, I have Kambosos. I think he's still a really tough challenge for anybody in the lightweight division, but I do think he gets outclassed by basically everybody else above him in the rankings. But he did beat Teofimo Lopez. He still is a very tough fighter, and he had his moments against Devin Haney. At number 6, I have Isaac Cruz. I think he is the toughest lightweight to put out. He has an insane chin, and he's just super tough, and also a really hard hitter. The reason why I have him above a guy like Ryan Garcia or Jojo Diaz is he gives much tougher fights, in my opinion, to the guys on the top. Next, we have Ryan Garcia, who probably is the quickest and fastest boxer in the lightweight division and maybe boxing in general. However, he does have such a limited resume and limited skill set that it's hard for me to put him above any of the previously mentioned lightweights. And finally, we have Jojo Diaz. He probably has the weakest resume out of all of the lightweights, considering that he hasn't defeated any of the top lightweights, and he doesn't really have that elite attribute in his skill set, such as elite speed, elite strength, elite fight IQ. He doesn't really have something that is a glaring strength. He's just good all around. So yeah, that concludes my top 8 lightweights. This is a really tough video to make because each fighter has a really good argument for why they should be above another, and the division is just so competitive and again, super deep. But what does your guys' rankings look like? Please put it in the comments below and stay civil and continue to subscribe because I'm going to continue to upload very soon.